Ponzi schemer is always going to seem trustworthy, is always going to seem convincing and successful. There's any number of crimes that a shifty-looking guy in a cheap suit might commit, but I can guarantee you a Ponzi scheme will never be one of them.
Many times the victims are very comfortable with the Ponzi schemers themselves, so there's an element of trust and loyalty, sometimes even to the schemers themselves, and they don't realize that they're being defrauded. Unfortunately, as history has shown, by the time they realize they're defrauded, the money's gone.
Normally, what we call a Ponzi scheme today is a take the money and run scheme. Ponzi took the money and stayed. He put down roots. Charles Ponzi was an Italian immigrant. He came here to the United States in 1903. He had been told, like so many immigrants, that the streets would be paved with gold. And in fact, when he got off the boat, he found that the street was paved literally with mud. He then spent the next 16 years bouncing around the United States, all kinds of various adventures, looking for his way to make it big. He came up with what he thought was a brilliant plan that worked on paper, that would make him a vast fortune. It was effectively an international form of postage stamps. That was the basis of his idea. He figured that if he could buy these over in Europe, bring them here, and then transfer them into cash here in the States, because he had bought them in depressed currencies over in Europe, he could turn them into 20 or 100 times their face value.
Ponzi schemes have been with us far earlier than Charles Ponzi. In the old days, they were called Peter to Paul schemes, as in robbing Peter to pay Paul. That was pre-Charles Ponzi. Then he gave his name to Ponzi schemes, and they are a chronic problem of fraud. Good times, bad times, boom times, busts, you have Ponzi schemes. What Madoff proved is you don't have to pay sky-high returns to have a successful Ponzi scheme.
Victims willingly hand their money over to the schemers themselves, and in fact, as we found with Madoff, they stood in line to be able to invest with him.
I think we thought of Ponzi schemes as cute, intriguing, a kind of historical artifact, until Madoff came along, and then he truly showed us how heartbreaking they are.
I guess I draw a distinction between Ponzi and Madoff, because everything I've read and learned about Madoff is he knew all along what he was doing. Maybe he thought he was a genius and thought he could continue pulling the wool over people's eyes. Ponzi was different. Ponzi truly believed he could make it work, not as a scheme, but turn it into a legitimate business. He believed he could somehow figure out a way to make it work. Almost from the moment the scheme ended to 1934, he spent much of that time in federal or state prison, and ultimately died penniless, sadly, in a charity hospital in Rio.